Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here, Chair Yellen. As you know, Wall Street banks could profit handsomely if they knew about the Fed's plans before the rest of the market found out. And that's why any leak of confidential information from the Fed results in serious penalties for the people who are responsible. But apparently there have been no consequences for the most recent leak. According to public reports, Scott Alvarez, the general counsel of the Fed, was put in charge of investigating a leak from the September 2012 meeting of the Federal Open Markets Committee. Nearly 2.5 years later, the results of this investigation have not been made public, and no action has been taken. On February 5th, Congressman Cummings and I sent a letter to Mr. Alvarez requesting a briefing from him in advance of your appearance here today, but so far we have not received one. Can you assure us that the Congressman and I will get a briefing soon?
So, if I might say by way of background, and
I just need a yes or no. I just want to be able to get a briefing on what's happened, that it's been 2.5 years and there's been no public report about what happened from a significant leak.
We are trying to work with your staff on the process to be responsive.
I'll take that as a yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. As you know, this past December, House Republicans successfully blew a hole in Dodd-Frank protections by tacking the repeal of the swaps push-out rule to a must-pass government spending bill. That repeal, which was written by Citigroup lobbyists, will allow the biggest banks in the country to continue to receive taxpayer protection for some of their riskiest derivatives and swaps. Now, a month before the repeal, Mr. Alvarez spoke at a conference at the American Bar Association, an organization that includes many lawyers who represent the banks that are affected by the Fed's enforcement of Dodd-Frank. Mr. Alvarez openly criticized the swaps push-out rule, saying, quote, "You can tell it was written at 2:30 in the morning, and so it needs to be, I think, revisited just to make sense of it." Mr. Alvarez also criticized the new rules Dodd-Frank put into place to address conflicts of interest at credit rating agencies, saying, quote, "Restrictions on the agencies really did not work, and it doesn't work, and it's more constraining than I think is helpful." So let me start by asking, does Mr. Alvarez's criticism of these two rules reflect your view or the view of the Federal Board of Governors?
So let me just say that over the years, we've had feedback that we have given on various aspects of Dodd-Frank.
I appreciate that, Chair. The question I'm asking, though, is these are specific criticisms he has made of Dodd-Frank rules that govern the largest financial institutions in this country, and I'm just asking, do his criticisms reflect your criticisms or the criticisms of the federal board?
I think I personally and the board consider Dodd-Frank to be a very important piece of legislation that has provided a roadmap for us to put in place regulations.
I appreciate that, Madam Chairman, but I just need a yes or no here. Do his criticisms reflect your criticisms?
I'm certainly not seeking in any way to alter Dodd-Frank at this time. It is a
Well, then let me ask the
framework
question differently. Do you think it's appropriate that Mr. Alvarez took public positions that do not evidently reflect the public position of the Fed's board, especially before an audience that has a direct financial interest in how the Fed enforces its rules?
Well, I think the Fed's position and my position is that we are able to work very constructively within the framework of Dodd-Frank to tailor rules that are appropriate for the institutions we supervise, and we're not seeking to change the
I
law.
appreciate that. We know that the Fed staff plays a critical role in shaping Dodd-Frank rules and enforcing them. In the case of the swaps push-out, Congress passed the law in 2010, but the Fed and the OCC delayed the effective date of the rule until 2016, giving Citigroup and other big banks time to get the rule repealed before it ever went into effect. Did Mr. Alvarez provide input into the Fed's decision to delay the effective date of the push-out rule?
I don't know. I mean, we usually have phase-ins for complicated rules that require adjustments by financial firms. This has been true of all of the Dodd-Frank rules that we have put into effect.
Well, I think this might be worth looking into. You know, the Fed is our first line of defense against another financial crisis, and the Fed's general counsel or anyone at the Fed staff should not be picking and choosing which rules to enforce based on their personal views. So I urge you to carefully review this issue and to assess whether the leadership of the Fed's staff is on the same page as the Federal Reserve Board. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.